Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this meeting, this joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. This is the Subcommittee on Public Safety, Natural Resources, and Transportation. I'm Senator Angie Taylor, and I have the honor of running this meeting, and we will start with our roll call. Madam Secretary, please.
Assemblymember Anderson.
Present.
Assemblymember Brown May.
Here.
Assemblymember Dickman.
Here.
Assemblymember Hibbets.
Here.
Assemblymember Moscow.
Here.
Senator Nguyen.
Here.
Senator Titus.
Here.
Assemblymember Watts.
Here.
Chair Taylor.
And I am present. Thank you very much. It looks like everybody is here, and we are ready to begin. Let's see. Let's make sure that we we have really one budget, but sub-budgets in the budget, one department and sub-budgets. How about that? We're going to be with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources today, and forestry in particular. I'm going to give the number right now, so if anyone would like to call in when we get to public comment, or, that's all we have is public comment. That number is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 847-6103-5713. So that number, go ahead and use that number if you'd like to call in. Just a couple housekeeping things. Ask everyone to please silence your cell phones as usual. And then also, when you come to testify, if you haven't already done so, please sign in and then give your business card, if you have one, to our secretary. Please make sure you turn the microphone on when you speak and off when you don't. And please make sure you say your name, yes, every time you speak. You know the routine. And if it's your first time you speak, if you'll spell your last name for the secretaries, that would be amazing, because we want to make sure our records are accurately reflected. And then finally, you'll see that committee members are using our laptops. We have notes on here, exhibits, and so on. So please do not take that as a sign of disrespect or of inattention. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Director Sedemeyer? Nope, you're not Director Sedemeyer. Come on up and begin when you're ready.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Casey KC, last name just KC. State Forester Fire Warden for the record, and acting James Settlemeyer today. I forgot my hat at home. So thank you for having us here today to talk about the Division of Forestry. Just as a basic overview, we have about 255 employees. That includes our seasonal firefighters who will be coming on in April. 16 grant programs that go out to the public, 26 facilities across the state, and 557 pieces of equipment, everything from fire trucks and buggies to chippers and masticators. In 2024, we had quite a few highlights. I'm not going to hit them all for you. One of our proudest moments is our vacancy rate. We went down to 13% across the state. A lot of our vacancies were due to the new creation of the Fire and Fuels team, or the Fire and Fuels crews across the state with the lack of inmate crews. And we're proud to say today we only have 13 vacancies on those crews, so we are working toward full. There's 64 total positions, so we are working toward full occupancy. Some of the reasons why we haven't filled is because of the qualifications necessary to get to the higher level firefighter. We just don't have people in the roles with those quals. And one of the other highlights I wanted to give was on Nevada Shared Stewardship. I know you guys have all heard of our Shared Stewardship program. It's a partnership with us, the federal government, or the state employee friends, everybody who works in natural resources across the state. We treated 175,000 acres last year. That was significantly higher than what we've treated in the past, and over the targets that we had. So we had, in all, in about 3 years, we had the first 5-year agreement, and we did work about 3 of those 5 years. The first 2 years was building the program. We've done 954 treatments in those 13 landscapes at about 370,000 acres. And we're really, really proud of attacking the fire problem together in the state of Nevada. As you know, last year we were still under in the fire season. It was a below average year, although we did have some big fires. We had about 750 fires burn 103,000 acres. We did receive 6 FMAGs from FEMA, 6 FMAG fires in state, so we will get that 75%, hopefully, of the state and local costs back for those fires if we hit the cost thresholds. The division's goals is to, kind of what I was speaking to, manage forests, rangelands, watersheds, and habitat. This requires active management across all of Nevada's landscapes. What we learned a long time ago is we needed larger scale treatments to actually impact the fires and the insects and disease outbreaks that we were seeing. We also have a goal to support fire-adapted communities. One of the things we saw out of the California and the Maui fires is we've got to have homes that are hardened and able to withstand fire. We're never going to get rid of fire in these ecosystems, so we have to make our homes ready to actually withstand those fires. Obviously, we want to ensure safe and effective wildfire response. That means working with our local government, our federal governments, and ourselves to make sure we're trained, staffed, and equipped to do the job that's necessary every year. And then an internal goal is to maintain organizational efficiency, which is to hire, train, equip, and retain employees. And we've appreciated all the tools given to us. We've used all of them in order to hire and retain employees recently. Some of the challenges are probably the same as all other agencies. We have an increased need for active management. We recognized a long time ago we actually needed larger landscape scale projects that slow how fire moves in and out of these communities. So that's where shared stewardship came from. We had to prioritize areas across the state. We had to make sure that we were working in those areas. And we had to make sure that we're doing the right size and scale of treatments across those landscapes. We have had recruitment and retention issues. Obviously, there's a lot of jobs open. People come and people go. Just when we get them trained, they go somewhere else. But we've utilized every tool available to keep good employees. And of recent, we've been getting really great applicants. So we've been very excited about that. We do have limited and aging resources across the state, our equipment, our facilities, all of, not our people, but our facilities and our equipment certainly are aging, and we're having a hard time keeping up with that. And then the stable funding, the majority of our project funding is from the federal government, and so making sure that we can continue to do our mission beyond that. Now I'm going to jump right into the 3 budget accounts. We have 4 budget accounts, but you didn't ask to hear about our one today, so we'll talk about 3 of them. Our general forestry account, budget account 4195. This is all program areas, including administration, and we have about 95 full-time employees in this account. All of our seasonal employees also live in this budget account. So for major budget enhancements this year, we have 2. We have we have 5 or 6, however many are on your screen, but the permitting fees, this is to actually bring in, per the statute, NAC 527, which allows us to bring fees in. We have been seeing an increase in disturbance across our landscapes for threatened and endangered species. That's requiring a lot more time and effort to permit. Historically, what we would do is permit those fees, and we would actually ask the permittee to do the work with their money instead of collecting the fees and doing the work. So the workload has grown so much, and now we do have a dedicated biologist to doing this work. So we are asking to actually bring in collecting those fees that are established in the NAC. Employee housing and rent, we have 2 houses. We are about to have 3. One of them is a trailer pad up in Elko County that is Public Works is pouring right now. Because one of the things we found is trying to hire people in rural places where the housing is a little bit of a shortage. We needed to give these firefighters a place to stay. So we do have 3 houses. They're in various stages of disrepair. So we need the funding to actually make them livable. They are livable, but we do not currently charge rent, so we are asking for the authority to charge a minor rent. So in case we need to fix things, in addition to their security deposit, we would have the funding to do that. We did ask for a couple reclassifications. They're budget neutral. Those are crew supervisor positions that work at air operations. We're asking to push them over into the captain position. We're doing this across budget accounts. You're going to hear me say that again in 4198. And the reason we're doing that is just to meet a different level of national qualification to ensure that we're meeting the highest standard of firefighting qualification. We have a couple efficiency roll-ups for budget accounts, just making sure that we put all of our operating into one category so that we operate a little bit more efficiency. Our Great Basin Coordination Center fees have gone up. They go up almost every year. We work with them on workload. Part of the workload difference in the state of Nevada is having local government in your dispatch center. So they spent more time dispatching to Nevada, and we had more fire, so thus our increased rate. And then the DCNR IT centralization just means we had dedicated IT staff that now will go over to the department, and then it'll come through the cost allocation. We do have some one-shot appropriations also in this account. Shared stewardship, I bring that back up again. We're very excited to be before you as the representative asking for the $6 million in state funding to match and leverage the federal funds and investments that we brought into the state. But I'm asking on behalf of all of the state. It's not just a fund for the Division of Forestry, it's all of our partners, Department of Ag, the Department of Wildlife, Parks, everyone who works in this account. And just to let you know, we brought in about $117 million in federal investments in those 7 landscapes that are active right now. That was primarily for work on federal lands. Obviously, they're the largest landowner. They have the most work to do. And so this would kind of leverage those funds. The reason we've been highly competitive is, one, our program is different than every other state because we involved a lot more people and we're actually acting in a different way. We have 5-year plans of action. Those 5-year plans of action in 7 landscapes alone, 7 of the 13, show about $65 million in work necessary in these landscapes to try to mitigate our fire response. And I'm excited to tell you today that we did receive a call from the Forest Service over 2 years ago. We had applied for funding to match the federal funding that was coming in, and we did receive it 2 years later. I don't know how it popped out, but it did. It's $24 million for private lands adjacent to the federal lands in the priority landscapes of the Sierra Front and Elko. So we're very excited. We haven't seen the letter yet, but they said it's coming. So we're very excited about that, to work with our partners to increase that investment. We saw real value in that in the Davis fire. We did have some homes lost in the Davis fire. We did have great successes in the fuel breaks that we had collectively put in, both for the home protection in other areas and also for large standing pockets of forested land that will revegetate on its own. So it's really important, this work we are doing. I'm not going to go into the computer replacements because those are just general computer replacements on a schedule, need to update our computers, and deferred maintenance, which we ask for every time to make sure that our facilities are up to standard and up to code. The fire suppression account.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump. We're just going to go budget by budget.
Okay,
Is that
perfect.
okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we'll just do that way we can just move forward together. Okay, so thank you so much. Not quite Sedemeier, but you'll do. No, thank you so much. We appreciate the presentation. We do have a couple of questions. And we'll begin with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. My question has to do with the permits that you mentioned on slide 7. So what factors do you think are contributing to the increased number of applicants for the permits to remove those protected plant species? And do you expect those factors to continue beyond the biennium?
Thank you for the question, Chair, through you. And again, for the record,
Please go direct.
Okay. And for the record, Casey. The factors is development. So we're looking at increased development primarily in Clark County, in the Las Vegas area, and up here in the Washoe County area. And so the development pressures that are putting onto these plants. So we do anticipate it to continue through the biennia. However, we never have any idea how much development pressure we're going to see. And also, following COVID, a lot more people out in these open areas and landscapes. And so we did see a lot of pressure from recreation as well.
Thank you. May I have a follow-up? Oh, thank you. So let's say that there's so many people that want to do this and you guys exceed that 100,000 that you're projecting. How would you, what factors would you consider to prioritize the projects that money would be used for?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, what we would do, we have a list. We work with Heritage. We have a list of threatened and endangered species, and we have a list of projects that we're looking at and or science that's necessary to help guide the work that we're doing. And so we would just pick the projects off the list of things. If it was very specific and focused, say, to steamboat buckwheat versus, the sunflower that I can't ever remember its name. If, we would look at specific areas, specific focus or general focus, going down the list of projects, mainly trying to make sure that we have the best science actually guiding what we're doing in protecting those species.
Thank you so much. So I think I've got the last one maybe, but happy to hear that it's going to be science related to the science of that. So the codes allow for it, for the fee to be, the codes allow for the agency to retain the fees, but the statutes do not. Is there currently a bill draft request that you've put in? Is there a plan to do so? Because looking through, it doesn't look like there is currently a BDR.
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, no, there is not a BDR in currently. And we will be putting one in. We weren't aware, sorry about that, of how the process worked to carry those funds forward. So until we can get the BDR in, we will just try to do the best work in the year we have, and then the money will revert to the general fund until we can get that resolved. And we have worked with GFO and LCB on that question.
You're welcome. Thank you, Assembly Member. Senator Nguyen?
Thank you, Chair. Kind of going back to some of that housing that you said that was kind of in disrepair, how you're hoping to be able to charge some rental, like nominal rental, I guess, for those things. Can I kind of back up? Because I know that the NRS stipulates that some employees must reside in the state-owned residence. So I'm thinking about like our fisheries, like our hatcheries, like there has to be someone there in case something happens. How many of these employees are required to live in these state-owned residents under that statute?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, none of our employees are required to live in housing. Historically, when we had an all-risk fire district on our NRS 473, they were required for a quick response. We don't have that statute anymore, so we don't have a 7-minute response time. So we don't have anybody who's required. It's just something that when we actually acquired Bowers back, it came with a house. And then we realized people needed houses, especially here along the front. It's very expensive for a starting young seasonal firefighter. So this was an option. They're kind of squished in there. It's a very small house, but there, I think, are 4 individuals living in it currently today.
How do you determine which employees are offered these rental units?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, we have a list of priorities. It starts with seasonal firefighters. It goes into full-time staff. And so we just kind of look as of today. We haven't maxed our capacity out. So We haven't had to make hard decisions on who gets booted and who doesn't. But that's how we looked at it. It was seasonal firefighters first. They're the lowest paid as they come in, and we need them to come in. And we allow the seasonals to stay through the season so long as they're going to return back the next season. So it's a benefit to offer them. We did see a lot of out-of-state applicants this year, which was interesting, and many of them needed a place to get picked up. So we do have a priority list, and we'd have to start getting to that if there was an overabundance of applicants.
So right now, you don't have a wait list. You have the ability to house anyone that's interested within that priority list that you've developed internally. I guess my concern is when I read NRS 322.063, it mandates that employees must reside in there. Have you had those conversations about changing that statutory construction from that must shall language to a more permissive statute or statutory like construction for that?
Yes, thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey, that statute is one of the state lands registrar, Charlie. And so we have had conversations with Charlie about changing that as we go forward, yes, because there are other state agencies utilizing that statute to actually provide housing. And we did have a conversation with him about getting us all called out and being less restrictive. Because for parks, say, it works because at parks, you're required to live in that house when you are in charge of that facility, but we don't have those same requirements.
Sorry, and this is kind of in line with what my colleague down there had asked previously about. It seems like there's a lot of things that we're doing that we're probably not statutory authorized to do at this time, like including the housing, the proposal to use these rental like monies. Are you considering, is there another bill draft request that's coming to also clean up some of that? Because I don't see there's any kind of authority to take that rental money and retain it, even if your intentions are to repair those like properties.
Yes, thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, yes, there will be one coming forward again. I apologize. I didn't really recognize the process for getting that to carry forward in statute. I thought that, so we are working with them on either and correcting the statute itself and then the potential for us to carry it forward. At this time, if we were to collect rent, again, we're not collecting today. They're living in there. They do put down a security deposit. The reason we would want to collect rent, like I said, is if something happens or if there's a wild party. I mean, that would never happen. But if they did something that destroyed it beyond the $300 security deposit, we would need the funding to fix it so other people could live in there. If we don't utilize it by the end of the fiscal year, it would go back to the general fund at this time until that bill is put forward.
Thank you. I think that answers all the questions that I have around that. I obviously am concerned when we know we're not doing something that's required by law or we're skirting the edges of this. I don't know. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator. I would like to, and thank you, Ms. Casey. You're doing, the boss just walked in, but she's good. We don't need you, sir. We don't. No, welcome. Good to have you. Please, feel free if you'd like to. No, you're good. Okay. Ms. Casey, I have there are a couple of bill drafts that will be required, especially as just brought up by our colleagues. My understanding is that we're past the date when the executive branch can submit BDRs. So if these requests, right, the plant fees and the rental and all, if that's the request, it will have to be done through the money committee. And so you want to put that process in place. As Senator Wynn said, we kind of like to operate within statute. So if we can line that up, but just know that has to be something that has to be done through the money committee because the deadline's passed for the governor's office.
Yes, thank you. And again, for the record, Casey, we do too. And so we will go through the process or if we were looking to do it in a future biennial, we will just revert the general fund that remains over if we can't get it through the money committee this time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yes, Senator Titus?
I think my question's really for staff then. It's my understanding that Monday is the last day for agency bills to be heard in the governor's bills. Is Monday not? Introduction. Correct. But, right, so not just committee, but agency bills too, correct?
I just know it's committee bills. I don't know what.
Right.
I'm not an agency, so I don't know. What
Right. But, so I don't think
Staff,
she's missed, my point is, I don't think she's necessarily missed the deadline.
We're talking about for BDRs. Yes, please go
Right.
ahead.
Madam Chair, for the record, Adam Dross with the Fiscal Analysis Division. For a budget implementation bill, if the subcommittee chooses to go with this route and have an NRS change, that can be a recommendation to the full money committees. And at that point, the full money committees could accept that recommendation, at which point one of the chairs could introduce that as a budget implementation bill at that time.
Yeah. Thank you, Adam. But so it still means that it still needs to go through the money committee and can't just be the BDR. So we want you to have the way to do it. So because we know that's something that you desire to do. Okay. Yep. Any other questions on this budget? Okay, sounds good. Let's go ahead and proceed, Ms. Casey. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, for the record, Casey. So now we're into the fire suppression account, budget account 4196. There are no FTEs in this budget account. This budget account simply pays for overtime and general fund, or their general time when they're out on fire. I don't have any major budget initiatives or anything to talk about in this budget account, but I am going to give you an update on where we are with invoicing, as I'm sure that is on your minds. So as of today, $27,898,373.32 dollars has been invoiced to our partners on those that were required in the audit. We have been reimbursed just shy of $1 million to date. I know the Forest Service is working feverishly to get all of our bills processed and moved to their payment center, so they are working as hard as they can. We did get the $11 million in general fund advance. We are already spent out on that. It paid back for the negative we were already in. We have paid 474 bills since that February when we got the general fund into our account, which totaled about just over $7 million in bills. So we are processing bills at the same time we are processing invoices for reimbursement, and they are very busy back there. We have all 8 of them fully focused. We aren't taking our feet off the gas for a long time until all of this is cleaned up. As of today, we still owe a little over $26 million in bills. And we owe $18.5 million back to the general fund and general fund advance. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions on budget account 4196.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. I'll go ahead and start out and see my colleagues leaning in. And you talked a little bit around this, and I was taking some notes, so I may have missed it. When do you anticipate having all the remaining billing out? Right, because I know they've been working really hard on it, and have, from my understanding, you've done a pretty good job and gotten to about the halfway point. When do you feel like we're going to be? They're all out.
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey. I would like to say by the end of the fiscal year. What I will say is the new system, our fire billing system, the semi-automated system, is very fast. We have pushed out those bills very rapidly. We're already complete through 24. We're well into 23. The hardest part is the bills that were a little further back when we were a fully paper system, and the tracking record wasn't great, which is what you read in the audit. So we have Jennifer Gamroth back as a contractor working feverishly for, I think, the 4th time since I've been with the Division of Forestry helping us in fire billing. And she was, amazed at the volume of bills that we process and the invoices we need to process. It's significantly increased in the last 10 years. And so my hope is by the end of the fiscal year, all of our the outstanding past bills for out of state would be out, and we are moving toward that. Every year, bills are pushing. For every year that was back found in the audit, we are pushing bills forward. So my hope is by the end of the year, it may take a little longer. As you know, with fire bills, when we send them, then there's questions. The Forest Service might have a couple questions. They may question some of our bills. Some of them come back, then they go back. So it does take a little bit of time.
Thank you for that. So we're hoping for the end, just want to make sure I got it. We're hoping that by the end of the fiscal, we'll have all the old ones out, right? Because those have to be the biggest challenge, as you said, because people get amnesia when it gets further along. They don't want to give up their millions.
Yes.
Imagine that. But then how about all the ones that aren't old? When do you anticipate we're going to be caught up? Because we have a new system, and you said it's working well, so yay.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, I don't know that we're ever caught up in fire billing, unfortunately, because part of our issue is the inability to pay. As of today, I cannot pay my past fire bills. I've hit the threshold in my authority. And so I have to stop paying past fire years. I have about 4.4 million in authority in current fire years, but I read to you $26 million in bills. So I'm never really caught up because I don't have the cash or authority in the account to pay my bills timely. And then I've got to consolidate them. So what happens if it's an out-of-state fire response or an in-state fire response? You have to pick the fire. Everybody who goes to the fire, I have to pay all of those bills, consolidate that. So if I continue pushing some bills forward, until I've paid everything, I can't consolidate for reimbursement. So my anticipation, however, is that once we get caught up on all the past years, and we're auditing beyond what the auditors audited, just for good measure and to make me feel a little better. So we will continue that full audit of all the accounts back to 2020. And then we will just be at the whim of how much money we have to pay and how many fires we have, because that's the other complicating factor is there's new fires coming in, there's new responses coming in. If it's a FEMA fire, for example, that has an FMAG, they have very strict deadlines. So we push those fire bills to the front and then everything else gets pushed to the back. And so it's kind of a constant shuffling game.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you for catching up on the billing. Can you tell me how much, if any, you've been notified that they're not going to pay because of the delay in the billing?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, none to this point. The Forest Service just billed us for 2020 fires a week ago. So as far as I know, we are not aware of any funds that will not be reimbursed. Unfortunately, for the world of fire billing, we're kind of all constantly in a lag. The Forest Service has gone through the same challenges and the BLM and the FEMA and everyone has gone through a churn in staff. And so we haven't been notified that any funds will not come back. We have had issue with some of the bills, as we're going through the adjudication, and if the bill is not right or they feel like something, we get in a constant debate over structure protection. The Forest Service can't pay for that. So what actually was structure protection? We go back and forth sometimes on those kind of costs. But as of today, we've heard of none that won't be reimbursed.
Quick follow-up on that. So you just mentioned that you just received a bill from the Forest Service from a 2020 fire. Yeah. How much was that bill?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, I don't know off the top of my head. I can, it was a cost share. It was in the millions, but I could get that to you.
I just asked because, once again, we're now going to have, you don't have that in your budget. You didn't budget for that, I would assume?
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey, we budget, the budget is based on a 5-year average. So a 5-year average of expenditures minus the money that we get out of contingency and supplemental. So we take that out. So it automatically kind of deflates the authority that we have. So did we budget specifically for that? No. However, we do have it in a long list of fires that are eligible for reimbursement and payment. So that's kind of what also causes the shuffle of funding from time to time.
Right, which is why you come to IFC all the time looking at paying these bills that you just got from 5 years ago. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And thank you, Ms. Casey. You mentioned a little bit, a couple of times, the audit that you did. I'm wondering, how's the agency doing on implementing the recommendations? I know you accepted all the recommendations, but I know this isn't done overnight. How are you doing on implementing them? And additionally, are you having challenges or problems implementing like this one we want to do, but we can't because of? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey. There were 13 recommendations. We accepted all of them. All of them have been partially implemented as of today, and some are complete. Many of them, I believe 9 of the 13, my numbers are always jumbled in here, so don't quote me specifically on that. We're on our updating our policies and procedures. Those are done and complete. That was done as of we had policies and procedures, they just weren't updated for the new system, so those are done. The only one that's kind of hanging us up right now for implementation is whether we would separate in-state and out-of-state fires into its own budget account. We have been working with the Controller's Office on what we could do in Core NV. The FBS, our fire billing system, can clearly delineate in-state and out-of-state. I can pull you a list right now, tell you exactly where we went and who owes us what on every fire we have. The state accounting system has not been that easy for us, and they're kind of busy implementing it for the state, so we're not the top priority. So that's one we still need to meet with GFO and LCB to determine whether we're going to actually split it into 2 budget accounts as was recommended. I would not recommend that. That's something I would not suggest it, only because cash and authority is our issue. In and out of state fires fluctuate wildly. So from a perspective of paying bills timely, if we don't have that authority in one account, we will be at you even more often with 2 separate work programs and 2 budget accounts that are now causing issue. But so either way, whatever you guys wish for us to do, we will do it. But it will make it a little harder for us in 2 separate budget accounts, but we can clearly delineate it. That's how the auditors did pull it out. It's very easily found. All out-of-state fires are delineated in a fire number with the state that you've gone to in the top, so.
Thank you, Ms. Casey. Any idea when the 13 recommendations will be fully implemented?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, we have our April update. So I believe I'd say about 70% of them are fully implemented. The one that's going to hold, the 2 that are going to hold us up is the separation of the budget accounts and the methodology for how we would delineate the actual authority and cash in those budget accounts. Those are the 2 that we're only partially on right now. We've been working on solutions, but respecting LCB and GFO are a little busy right now. We haven't had time to have that meeting, but we will following this. We talked this morning, so.
Well, other than those 2, the rest of them are fully implemented?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for my question. I know that was kind of a rapid fire, but I had that all in my head. So. Chair Watts?
Thank you, Chair. I have several questions as well. So a couple of things I want to check in on. So first of all, congratulations. It sounds like, the vast majority of the kind of backlogged bills invoices have been sent out. And so it sounds like we kind of went in reverse order, right? It sounds like the easiest ones to get out were the least stale. And so now as we're getting back into the older part of the system, it's taking a little bit more work, but I think you provided some good clarity. And I think you also provided some good clarity about we're never completely caught up at any point in time just because of the dynamics of how this works. Could you give us a little bit of a sense of kind of what you expect the timeline generally looking like going forward to make sure that we don't end up with backlogged stale claims? So understanding that there is some of that fluctuation and prioritization, do you have kind of a goal of when you want to make sure that you can get invoices out the door to make sure that they don't stack up again?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, just to clarify too, we didn't go for the easiest, although they were the easiest. We went for where the most money was. 24 and 23 were the 2 years between the 2 of them of the 32 million in the audit. That was 24 million. And so we actually went for the years that had the highest amount of money, and then we're going backward from there. So concurrently, we're running in 24 and 23 and 22 and 21. So bills are being pushed out in all of those years. We just actually separated the contractor into the old billing system because we have brand new employees and we didn't want to train them on the old system and the new system. So they're kind of running concurrently. And a timeline for going forward, once we get cleaned up, going back, there should not have to ever be a go back. Once the new billing system won't allow for that, you can see the aging report right in there. So the bills that are coming in, you can see when they're submitted to us. That was part of the problem of the old system. If it's a paper copy and somebody put the paper in the wrong file and you have no idea where that file might have gone or if it went to the chipper. So that's part of the issue with the old system. The new system doesn't allow for that. It's an aging report. We can actually see bills right now that haven't even been submitted to us. We can't see their cost, but we can see that, Truckee Meadows has a bill coming to us for a particular fire, and we can start nudging them on getting their bills in timely. So one of the things we are also doing is we're going to put in a quicker timeline on the fire protection districts through the WFPP program. We have 180 days with the possibility to extend, which everybody extends in the feds and the state. So we're going to put a 90-day timeline on local government. So 90 days from when they return from out of state, get your bill in so that we then have time to adjudicate the bill, make sure it's accurate, and get it to them in 180 days. So as far as backlog, once we get caught up with this backlog, there shouldn't be a backlog. The only backlog you'd have is being able to pay your bills timely to then get invoiced.
Thank you for that. I know that the division is also exploring compacts, interstate compacts. Can you just provide, from a budgetary standpoint, do you expect that if we enter into any of those compacts, would there be any kind of additional complexity added into this current system around billing?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey. Compacts just allow us to move things differently. So right now, most of our movement goes through the federal agreement. We have a master cooperative fire agreement with all of our federal partners, and the WFPP partners tier into that for us. So we can only go out of state on federal funded fires. So if the state of California, California's a bad example. Let's go with Arizona. Also a bad example. We have a state to state with them. Sorry, I don't know. Utah. We're going to Utah. So if Utah calls us on a state fire where the state is actually responsible for those costs and it's not running through their federal bill, we can't respond to help them because we don't have a compact to do so. We do have state-to-state agreements, but it would require us to have 50 state-to-state agreements to actually mobilize across those states, and more importantly, have them come here when we need that firefighting resource. So we do have a state-to-state with California. We utilize their assets all the time. The nice part about compacts is it's a quicker movement of assets. So sometimes on a federal fire, California might be holding a few people back because they're concerned about California. But if they know that they're just coming across the border to Nevada and they could call them back quickly, they'll send them to us, like happened in the Davis fire. We got the night flying helicopter and a multitude of crews, which we wouldn't have gotten through the ordering system because it wasn't in the federal ordering system. So this actually just allows us to mobilize sometimes the same assets, sometimes more, and a little bit quicker. The one nice part about compacts is state to states, as long as they have money, they actually pay a little faster than our federal agreements do.
Thank you. And just as a quick follow-up, so those would essentially just be out-of-state fires and would be managed through that portion of kind of the billing and management system?
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey. It's out-of-state fires, but then also in-state assets. So when we need them, you get a big fire and we need their assets to come in, that's when it's most important for me. Yeah.
Yes, and I think for the residents of the state as well. So I appreciate that. So I want to revisit the really tricky to implement audit finding around the budgeting procedure. So the proposed budget doesn't reflect any of the changes that were suggested in the audit related to potentially creating another budget account or otherwise managing that. I think you spoke to this. It's challenging. You did say that you don't think that's the best solution. Do you have any ideas on what a solution could be that would help kind of balance what the audit brought forward in terms of increasing entities outside of the division's ability to see these different expense categories without having to get a report pulled out of the fire billing system?
Thank you for the question, and again, for the record, Casey. Yeah, our proposed budget didn't reflect it. We didn't have the time to talk about it, and I'm don't know how else we would. In and out of state fluctuates so wildly. The reason we send firefighters out of state mostly, one, it's a national ordering system, so we all rely on each other for in times of need. So we send, they send kind of thing. But mostly why we send is training. We have to make sure that our staff meet national certifications and qualifications. And if we didn't send them out of state in low fire years, they actually wouldn't be qualified to fight fire in Nevada, because not only do they have to get that qualification, but then there's a competency in that qualification which requires them to have so many responses per year. So it's critically important to get our firefighters out. That's at local government, state government, federal government. All of us are in the same boat there. I don't know how else we would, the audit did say something about, a different formula for how we would look at out-of-state versus in-state, and it's going to fluctuate as wildly. So a 5-year average is really the best we all have been able to come up with in both budget accounts. And again, you kind of need that cash and authority in the budget account, because in years like, let's just say, this year was higher than the year before. Our in-state response was higher than our out-of-state response. But that authority from the out-of-state response that had come in the 5-year average from the year before actually helped us pay our in-state bills. So I think I forgot the question.
I think you are answering some of my questions, because I think the question is, have you figured out an alternative to separate budget accounts? And it sounds like the answer is you're thinking about it, but we haven't landed on something yet.
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. I got off on one of my Casey moments. But again, for the record, Casey, we have been talking about it. And like I said, we have been working with Core NV. I think for us, it's very easily delineated in the FBS system. For you all to pull it out of Core NV is a simple category or other delineator, and we are working on that currently. First, they just told us they were too busy, because they were, and so we weren't mad about that. And then second, they told us we're not sure how to do that, but they are currently and actively working on trying to figure that out.
Thank you. And it sounds like, I think categories might be something to look into. It sounds like, and so I guess just correct me if I misunderstood anything, or add in anything if you didn't cover it. But it sounds like with separate budget accounts, you're potentially looking at 2 different formulas, 2 different sets of authority, and potentially double the amount of work programs at IFC, which I know many of the members up here are never thrilled about. So does that kind of summarize some of your concerns or complications with going the budget account route?
Yes, again, for the record, Casey, yeah, those are my concerns. I'd be at it twice, and the people who do the work programs are the same people who are trying to pay the bills and invoice. And so the more I take them off of doing that work and doing these, 3 months in advance requests for 2 separate budget accounts, it just creates a lot more workload for us. And the uncertainty every year is, where is the fire going to start and in whose state? That's the thing we cannot ever predict.
Thank you. And with your indulgence, Chair, I have one last comment. First of all, again, I just want to be clear. We really appreciate all the work that you and the division are doing. And again, I understand the timeline around the audit findings is also tricky to manage with our legislative and budgeting process. We really appreciate all the work that you've done already to help implement the audit findings and catch up on all of this billing. At the same time, I think we want to make sure that we do everything that we can while we're in session to help get all of these issues resolved. I think also we do not want to end up in another budget work session trying to dive through figuring all of this out. So my ask to you, as well as to the department leadership, is to work with our staff, with the governor's finance office, to develop a budgeting methodology, so that we and to work on that very quickly, so that we can have something when we bring this budget back for closing that we can implement. And so if it's not budget accounts, perhaps we look at categories, we get the Core NV folks. I know they're busy. We've heard in other presentations that they're working at breakneck pace, but at the same time, we don't want to miss the opportunity that we have when we're building the budget for the next 2 years. So figuring out how do we fund initial costs in a way that addresses the short-term cash flow issues and operational needs. And again, it sounds like the budget account route has a lot of to figure out what that alternative looks like that strikes that balance of us being able to get that information and help address kind of the fundamental issue in that audit filing. So that is my request, is that we'll provide our resources on our side, and we just ask that you all work with us immediately to help figure out what a workable solution can look like so that we can bring that back at closing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to emphasize that we have a window while we're here, right? And we want to get it done while we're here. I think that'll make everybody, put everybody in a better position moving forward. So thank you, and thank you for emphasizing that, Chair. Assemblymember Mosca.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll reiterate that our gratitude, and it's good to see you. I think it's along the same line of questioning, but we know that 18.8 million is included in the governor's recommended budget, but how does the agency anticipate funding response costs during the 25-27 biennium if it does exceed that amount?
Thank you for the question, and again, for the record, Casey. Just to be clear, the 18.8 million included in the budget account is authority, not cash. And so that's the 5-year average of expenditures minus the contingency fund and those fires that are reimbursed. We actually average about a $27 million a year. In peak years, we're well over that. In slow years, we might be well under that. And so we will be back at the contingency table and supplemental table until we can figure out a budgetary way to increase the cash and authority in the account. We did submit one in our budget. It didn't pass the tests, unfortunately. And we have had multiple different ways to do it over time. One of them was a contingency account that was specific to the fire suppression. So it was a set aside for fire suppression. We didn't have to go through all the different channels, just one channel to get to that, which did make it easier, and we paid a little quicker. So we are continuing to work with LCB and GFO on how we could make it different in going into this biennia.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Assemblymember Brown-May.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for this report. My first question is this you in uniform in this photo?
Thank you. For the record, Casey, yes, that was our new signing of the next 5 years of shared stewardship. So that was me in uniform. I do wear it from time to time.
I just want to acknowledge how really great that is to see, right? We only get to see you in this capacity. And this was a brand new budget account for me when I started on this committee last session. Really enjoyed learning about what your division does in order to support all of us. And so really want to also convey my appreciation for what you do. And I love the photograph. Thank you so much. Going back to that audit report, right, just for additional clarification, I know that the budget formula that was recommended in the 2019 legislature was not really what was followed, right? And so I'm curious to know, how do you intend to comply? How does the agency intend to comply with that LCB audit report recommendation related to how you document and calculate the 5-year average that's used that you build your budget off of?
Thank you for the question, and again, for the record, Casey. The formula is almost as complicated as the paying of fire bills. We have followed the recommendations of LCB and GFO historically. Sometimes the reason that formula isn't followed, so 2019 was a great example. In 2019, there was a large fire, the Little Valley Fire, so we were asked to take that out of the formula. They said that that was an anomaly fire, so we took it out. So that's what they meant in that audit finding when they said we haven't followed, but we were following directions. We just do, so some years we've actually dropped the high years in past formulas as they looked to be anomalies. I think there has been maybe a misconception about how much fire and the costs of those fires as they increase. The more and more homes that we have in the way of those fires, the more costly that becomes. We get more assets on the ground, you get more air assets. That does cost a little bit more. So the cost of fire generally is going up, and that's largely due to the fact that we're seeing a lot more fire in these ecosystems. So we have been following the formula minus whatever we are told to minus out.
Thank you for that. So then, are you, not you, Casey, are you as the division working with GFO and LCB fiscal to determine what adjustments are needed for that methodology, right? How are you gonna look forward?
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey, yes, we work very closely with GFO and LCB on all of these issues. We could not do this by ourselves. And so it is always a 5-year average. The difference is if we take something out that's an anomaly, then we would subtract that out and not put that in, and or there have been times when budget corrections have happened on the other side and there's like when we see it on this side, there's a little bit of money that is different and we have to adjust for that. And so those are some of the other adjustments that we do, which could make it look like we didn't follow the 5-year. When it was submitted, it was the 5-year average this year as well. I don't know if any adjustments were made specifically off the top of my head for this year, but it was in the past biennia. There was a minor adjustment, things that were considered one-time expenditures taken out. So then we have to adjust those types of things as well.
Thank you for that. And then just one final, just for clarity, right? The audit report recommendations that came from LCB, your division has accepted all of those audit recommendations. So then the goal would be to align the division's methodology and projections with what is recommended in the LCB audit.
Thank you for the question. Again, for the record, Casey, yes. So that's what we are working to do.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Any other questions on fire suppression? Okay, seeing none, let's go move forward to conservation camps, 4198.
Okay, thank you. Now, the third and final budget we'll talk about today, conservation camps. This is budget account 4198. We do have about 100 full-time staff in this account. As you all know, this one has been the budget account with the most, well, I don't know anymore which one of our budget accounts has the most, but this one has changed a lot, morphed because of AB 236 and the lack of inmate workers in our program. We shifted, so currently today we have 3 camps open, 3 and a partial 4 camps open and actively running. That's Eastern Sierra or Stewart Camp here, Three Lakes Valley down in Las Vegas, Pioche, and Jean, the only female camp in Las Vegas. And so those are the camps that are actively running. Everywhere else, we have shifted those positions that would have been running crews to now full-time fire fuels crews. So they have 8 staff permanent, and then we fill in the extra 2 that are necessary in seasonal positions. And we have 3 of those across the state. So I'm going to flip to the next page. We've got Marlette Peak here, the fire and fuels crew. We've got Grindstone. So a fire and fuels crew, just so you guys know, I've said it before, but I don't know who all hears me. A fire crew to respond the minimum is 18 staffing. The maximum is to like 22. So we have to meet those minimum staffing levels for a fire crew responding under the national guidelines. So in Marlette Peak is a full 20-person crew, and they have a couple additional seasonals. Grindstone crew in Elko is a full 20-person crew. Winnemucca, we have a 10-person squad. And then Ely, we have a 10-person squad. So they could come together and make a full crew. The reason we actually had first a full crew in Ely, but we had an opportunity we didn't know we had with the Forest Service. They were actually unable to staff their crew in Ely, so we actually created an interagency crew. It was the first of its kind in the state that's permanently interagency. We have many crews that come together in response that are made up of interagency players, but this is the first one. They run every day, all day, together. Theirs is seasonal, so we're staffed year-round, so we continue on NDF projects, but they're working every day on crews. So what you see as our major budget enhancement here is the continuation of that consolidation as we started to see vacancies in higher level camp positions. We didn't need the amount of overhead we had when we had 10 active camps, 74 crew bosses, and a complete program with the Department of Corrections. So we started reclassifying positions. Mostly, the initial reclassification was toward the fire and fuels crews so that we could ensure that we got them trained, qualified, and hired in all of those rural areas to actually respond. That is working. This next set of reclassifications, there are 10 before you in this budget account, is actually trying to get more toward our mission. As we have seen more increase in work on the ground, we need more foresters helping to guide that work. Foresters have to write the plans, foresters have to implement the required permits and all of the things we have to do to get these projects on the ground. And so so 2 of those are forester shifts from higher level. One was a camp area soup, one was a camp soup position. Then we are asking for a historic preservation specialist. We have a lot of clearances we have to get through from a threatened and endangered species and an archaeological perspective to actually get work onto the ground. And so we need that person in-house. Everybody is short-staffed, and trying to get those permits through is almost impossible when you're relying on other folks. So we are hopeful to get that position. We need a construction project coordinator. That's basically a facilities manager. The division has not ever had one. And we have a program manager who acts in that capacity, but doesn't have much time for the rest of his program because of how many facilities we have across the state and the age of those facilities. So we are asking for that shift. And then again, back to the fire captains, we are taking those leaders of the new fire and fuels crews, and we are neutrally reclassifying them from crew supervisors to captains to reach that higher level of qualification. Type 2 IA status, that's what we call it, Type 2 initial attack. We were never able to reach those with inmate crews, largely because of the time in, the required time in. There's a whole standard of who has to be qualified to what level and how many of those things you need on a crew to reach like Type 2 initial attack and or hot shot. That's the one everybody knows is the highest level of qualification. We aren't striving for hot shot. We're striving for Type 2 IA. We're looking in-house. And we did have one, Marlette Peak, for 2 years. They did lose that status this year because we had some turnover in staff. And so they're going to be trying to build that back up this year. So that's the real gist of what we're doing here, is just kind of continuing that evolution and trying to do what's right for the agency to be in order to guide the work of all these crews and make sure that they are doing good work every day. Just because you're titled a firefighter in the Division of Forestry, you're really a forester who fights fire when fire happens. So every day they're out on project mitigating risk and working in the field. It does make them really good firefighters. We like to cross-train all of our staff. Our foresters can fight fire. Our firefighters are foresters. We like to make sure that both have both qualifications. It certainly helps you to know what's burning out there if you know what type of vegetation you're in, how fast it's going to burn, how hot it's going to burn. And so that cross-training is really, really important. And they do have to meet physical fitness standards, so making sure that they're hiking hills every day and sawing things every day, it helps to keep them in shape for when fires happen. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Casey. Any questions on conservation camps, Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that. I was going to ask a question regarding the amount of time that they're out there actually fighting fires versus involved in fire mitigation. And it sounds, do you keep, obviously you keep some hourly statistics and it changes, depends on the forest, but that it's reassuring to know they're out there every day except for routine days off, doing some mitigation. The question I have is, are they actually involved, because I didn't see anywhere in any of your budgets regarding the seed programs, planting, reforestation, those type of things?
Thank you for the question. And again, for the record, Casey, yes, they are involved in all of that. Those crews have historically been our seed collection crews. As you are all aware, that's the one budget account we're not going to talk about, but we do have a seed bank and a nursery program in the state, 2 nurseries, one here and one in Vegas. So these crews have been our seed collection crews. They're guided by foresters. The foresters and folks know where that seed is. They're kind of looking for ripeness, and then we send the crews out to pick. They are also the crew that works at all of our nurseries, planting all of those things. And every day they are working on projects, so seeding on rehabbing fires. They'll be out there this week doing some rehab on Davis, I believe. So every day the crews are wherever we need them to be. We have a priority list of projects in-house. It's either grants that we've got through the federal government, so it may be, a pile burn, it may be collecting seed, it may be, cleaning seed, it may be planting trees, it may, whatever we tell them as their priority today, that is where they are every day. And the only thing that changes that is leave, obviously. We do try to promote a work-to-life balance. When I came in, we were pretty heavy on the lots of work and no life, and I did try to balance that out for our firefighters. They were very concerned about being here all the time and never being home, and it's like, no, you can be home sometimes too, even during fire season. But yeah, so we do guide that work every single day. We have a project priority. Everything has to be mission oriented. As you heard in the past, some of our crews were doing roadside cleanup. When I came in, we cut all of that. That was a function of needing to make revenue in this budget account, the 30% revenue requirement. But that work isn't what we should be doing. It's also dangerous work that they were doing, so.
Follow up on that. So are you making that up then, the revenue component in the nurseries? I'm a big proponent of the nurseries, and I have visited it many times. Lots of my plants and trees and my properties have come from the nursery. So is that, and we're not seeing that budget, I understand that, but just knowing that it's in good stead and that it's going to continue is encouraging. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions on conservation camps? Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your work and really appreciate the presentation of the report.
Thank you, and I appreciate the support that you all have given, and we very much appreciate the work we're allowed to do every day, so.
All right. Thank you. We have one budget account left, and that is the Division of Environmental Protection budget account 101-3173. I see staff is getting into position. All right, just begin when you're ready. I know it's missing the picture, huh? We have it.
Good morning, Senator Chair Taylor, Assembly Chair Watts, and it's nice to be here this morning. My name is Jennifer Carr, C-A-R-R, and I'm the Administrator of the Division of Environmental Protection. I appreciate the opportunity to present a budget account for you today. You've only asked for one of the 11 that we have, which is okay with me. Go ahead. Generally, just a little bit about the agency. Our mission is to preserve and enhance the environment of the state in order to protect public health, sustain healthy ecosystems, and contribute to a vibrant economy all at the same time. As a general overview of the division, we do have 11 different programs and budget accounts. We have 3 boards and commissions, and this year we have 282 employees overall statewide. Generally, we do implement state law and federally delegated programs such as the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Resource Conservation Recovery Act, and other state-only programs, such as our mining program, as well as many other programs that we have within the purview of the agency. In addition to the fact that we have a significant water and wastewater infrastructure financing program that we're really proud of. But it's not in this budget account, it's just a general agency overview. So go ahead. So today we'll talk about budget account 3173, which is our Bureau of Administrative Services. This budget account provides administrative services to the division internally. It includes our administrator's office, our Office of Fiscal Management, our Office of Human Resources, our grants and contract management specialists. We have a public information group, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about a new Office of Records Management that's a little bit of an internal reorg that we're doing in the coming biennium. Overall, budget account 3173 for the biennium includes a little over $28 million in budgeted revenue and expenses. I will note that we have no general fund in the agency, not just this budget account, but in the entire agency, we have no general fund. It's all grants, fees, and other various reimbursement agreements that pay the way for us. For this budget account, our funding is largely an indirect cost assessment that is applied to the personnel costs of the other budget accounts as essentially overhead to fund the agency under this administrative services account. We do negotiate that assessment percentage annually. The US EPA is the current federal partner that we negotiate that with. And those fluctuate over time just based on various expenses that are needed to run the overhead of the agency. We do have 34 full-time equivalent positions in this budget account in base. And then I'll talk a little bit in a minute about the drop in FTE that you see there going into 26-27. We're moving 10 people out, but we have one new position being requested, so we'll end up with 25 in the new biennium. So this presentation is actually going to be pretty short. We have just a few primary budget enhancements. The single most important one to us in this budget account is a new senior management analyst. We've requested it as a management analyst 4. In addition to supervising some existing positions, the primary focus of this new position will be to serve as a division's, what we're calling an organizational change agent. The position will be tasked with planning, organizing, and coordinating all our internal operating procedures to improve the efficiency, accuracy, and consistency of all division business processes. Excuse me. This position will also oversee a new grouping of existing staff for the division to have, as I mentioned, an Office of Records Management within the Bureau of Administrative Services. As the division continues to progress deeper into paperless e-records environment, this office will ensure consistency again across divisions with enhanced records management processes. And the new position is consistent with Governor Lombardo's 3-year plan for improving government support services in the 3-year plan at section 5.2.3. The division continues to grow across the board, both in staff and in services, and we're planning for this position to ensure that this is done intentionally and very consistently, improving our overall services to both our internal folks and thus to the public. The other budget enhancement you see on the screen is actually a combination of 3 budget enhancements. I believe you've heard about it before, but our information technology program staff, there are 10 of them. They're going to transfer to DCNR. And then those IT services will be funded by Director's Office cost allocation. In our case, over the biennium, it's going to save us about $500,000. So. Other budget enhancements are fairly routine. The E710, 11, and 12 are our general biennial replacement of computer hardware and software, our servers, other support equipment, and the software to run them. There were modifications in the DCNR cost allocation for the department, and thus some of those adjustments to their budget account are affecting ours and the transfer of funds that we send over there to support the department. And then the last one, E499, was added during the budget development process to generally address ARPA funding. The grant project that we have is funded through December of 2027, but we have all the funding that we need for that ARPA project in 2025, and so we're working through that project with the folks that are doing the work. And then for funds that aren't spent, they will just roll forward until we are finished with that project or time runs out. Hopefully we'll finish the project first. So that is E499 with 2 subtractions from the base budget. And that is it.
Thank you so much, Administrator Carr. Do we have any questions? I do happen to have a couple of them. What's your vacancy rate?
Thank you for the question, Jennifer Carr, for the record. We are down, as of Friday, to 9.22% vacancy. At a high of April of 2023, we were at a little over 19 to 20% vacancy. So we've made significant strides towards dropping that vacancy rate. Everyone's working really hard to recruit, and it's been working out famously. So thank you for the question.
Well, congratulations on that. My other question is, you mentioned working with the EPA and so on. How do you anticipate the changes at the federal level impacting your division?
Thank you, Chair Taylor. Again, Jennifer Carr for the record. That is a very interesting question. We're waiting to see what may or may not change programmatically. I think it's way too soon to tell as far as that goes, as to what sort of rules they may change, what sort of programs they may create or eliminate. However, we were very pleased to learn on Friday that there is a continuing resolution of the federal government. They're funded through September. Based on information we've received so far, the state and territorial assistance grants, we call them STAG funds, those are essentially flat in the continuing resolution. And so while there was a tremendous amount of fear and angst over the last few weeks, it does appear for the time being, until we see the detail in every line item, it does appear that there won't be a major cut to our federal funding as was rumored. You know, we heard numbers as well as y'all did, as much as 65% budget cut for the EPA. That does not appear to be the case in the state and territorial assistance grants. One other piece of good news that that we learned last week was in the continuing resolution, the funding for the state revolving funds, those infrastructure grant financing programs that I spoke about for our water and wastewater infrastructure, those are also apparently going to remain flat. And even better news is that while that has been true over the years, there's been this other thing called community project funds or earmarks that were coming off of that state revolving fund money. And it's our understanding, again, we want to see it in black and white, but it's our understanding that those earmarks, those federal project earmarks, have been eliminated, so that won't be reducing our overall state revolving fund money. It's kind of a mix because some of those community project funds were coming to Nevada potentially, but for those infrastructure projects, we often have the ability to fund them with our own programs. So if the earmarks aren't coming, hopefully those projects would just come to us through our normal channels, and it would be a wash for us. So while it looked pretty dire a couple weeks ago, I'm actually much more confident today that the federal picture is somewhat stable at this point in time.
Cautiously optimistic. Thank you, Administrator Carr. Assemblymember Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. And this is not a question. I just wanted to very quickly say again, thank you for the work that you did on that the mine cleanup bill that was such a huge undertaking. It was not exactly the most exciting thing to go through. However, your department was incredibly accessible and worked with others. And so I just wanted to thank you and your department for your dedication to trying to get that cleanup language into our statute. Hopefully, I know we just had that hearing, but then also just how much more time it took to educate others about it. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember. Anything else? Okay. Looks like the Department of Environmental Protection, you are done. Thank you so much. We appreciate it and thank you for your work. This will officially close the budget hearing for the 4 budgets that we reviewed this morning from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Seeing nothing else, we will go to the last item on our agenda, and that item is public comment. If you'd like to make public comment here in Carson City, come forward. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. And for the phone line, I'll give that number one more time, 888-475-4499. And the meeting ID is 847-6103-5713. ABH, do we have any callers in for public comment this morning?
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, that is it for us this morning. We are adjourned.